Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to use forms in React. Now we already implemented a mini form in our application, which allows you to add a new to-do. I'm going to show you the example here, so I can just type new to-do, and when I click this button, it's going to add it to the array and it's going to be shown here. Now what I want to do is to actually use HTML forms for this. And the reason for that is that we can have stuff like validation, and we can, for example, like we can hit enter to submit. So for example, when we hit enter, it doesn't add the to-do, we have to click the button. So we can use forms to get a lot of cool native behavior that the browser provides. Now the way we're going to do this is very simple. All we have to do is just use the browser form element. Now we just wrap our mini form in the form element, just like this. Now we don't need the action. And right now, our form should work. However, we do need to do one thing. It's not required because buttons by default are of type submit, but I can give it a type equals submit, so that when we click the button, it's actually registered as a submit. Now, if I go back to my app and type something new, I'm gonna click add. Now, as you can see, our app, the array was updated, but the app refreshed very quickly, right? And the reason for that is that forms have a default behavior of refreshing the current page. Now, the way to override that behavior is, for example, if I go back to our form element and it has an onSubmit event. Now, on this onSubmit event, all I have to do is just add an event that prevent default. Okay, now let's ignore this for now. Now what this does is that when we submit the form, our event has a method called prevent default, which basically stops the browser from refreshing, right? And also another thing, when you wrap a button inside of a form, when you click the button, two events are called. There's the onClick event and there's the onSubmit event. So these two are both called. So in our case, we can get rid of the onClick event and put our logic inside of the onSubmit event. So right now, when we click this button, it's gonna call the onSubmit event on the form. Now we can test this. If we go back and we click new, when I click the button, see it's added and the page doesn't refresh. So right now this is a form. But also, like I said previously, one of the cool things about having your inputs wrapped in forms is that when I type new to do, I can press enter and it will actually submit the form. So I don't have to click the button. Another cool behavior is that if we add validation, so right now we can actually add empty to-dos since we're not checking it with JavaScript, but we don't have to check it with JavaScript. We can actually use the built-in browser validation. So on the input, I just type the required prop and I save. And now whenever I try to submit, I get this browser warning telling me that I need to fill out the field. And when I start typing and I click add, it works. So this is the advantage of using native browser forms. You get this automatic validation and automatic keyword events. So you can just type stuff and hit enter and it will be added. And yeah, so this is the coolest part about using forms. And one other thing about forms is whether an input is controlled or not. Now you saw how I showed you previously, when you use the value, we can actually not set this prop. I'm going to comment it out and our application will actually work as expected. So I'm going to add new. I'm going to click add to do. But the problem is the input doesn't reset, even though our state for the input is actually empty, as you can see here. So when I click new again, so you can see it updates, but when I hit add to do, the state resets, but the input doesn't reset. This is because this is an uncontrolled input, as in we don't explicitly set the state of the input. So in order to fix this, we just need to set the value of the input to the value of the state. And now, when I type something else and I hit add to do, the input resets because we reset the state manually after we submit the form. So this is the difference between a controlled and an uncontrolled input. Uncontrolled, you don't control the value, whereas controlled, you actually explicitly set the value of the input. Now, in order to understand this better, I'm gonna remove the onChange event, and I'm gonna go back to my app. Now, when I try typing, it doesn't work. Right now, I'm tapping my keyboard, but nothing is being inputted. That's because the value of the form is set to the value of the state. But since I commented out the onChange event, we're not changing the state, so the form is stuck on the empty string, which is the default value, as you can see here. And you can see as I type, the state isn't being updated. So in order to fix this, so you can think of it this way. Whenever you have a controlled input, you must have an onChange event, right? Otherwise, the value will never change, or as in the input will never update. So whenever you use onChange, it's almost always better to use value with it. So when you change the state, the input will get the value of that state and reflect the change. And yeah, so that's how you handle forms in React. This is a very basic form, but as you can see, all you have to do is just wrap it inside of a form element, have an onSubmit event, and the most important thing is you actually need to call this method, prevent default, to actually stop the page from refreshing, and then you can do whatever logic that you want. In our case, we're gonna add a to-do. So yeah, that's how you handle forms in React. Thanks for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one.